Already a week removed from the first round of the 2025 NFL draft and the full draft kind of as a whole. These are teams that I thought had knocked it out of the park draft wise or absolutely swung and missed on their draft. There's five of each. There's going to be five winners and five losers. We're going to start off kind of on the negative, and then we're going to focus on finishing positive because that's what I'm about. I'm focused on finishing positive regardless if you start negative or not. Now, there are some kind of philosophies I have kind of focused on hyper focused on to an extent drafting for volume when a team needs offensive and defensive line help, drafting for volume, drafting multiple players at that position, whether it be interior offensive or defensive line or on the edge or an offensive tackle, and also kind of maneuvering around the draft board and making sure they're not reaching on a player that they could get multiple picks later by trading down. And if they don't have a strong amount of assets, do they build on those assets and trade back and kind of garner more assets, even if they have a necessarily player at this position that's higher on their board, but it's not too much further down for another player at that position, and they can trade back and get more assets and kind of improve their portfolio in a sense. So we're going to dive into five losers, five winners of the 2025 NFL Draft. There is a clear winner here, and I think also a clear loser here. We're going to dive right into it. Now we're going to dive right into it with the Minnesota Vikings being my loser of the draft. Now, what I didn't understand here is they came in with pretty much the least amount of draft capital out of any team in the league and took probably the 10th, 8th to 10th best offensive lineman in the entire draft at pick 24 when they had multiple guys on my board, including Josh Simmons, who I had number one on my board for offensive lineman. They took Donovan Jackson over him, and it absolutely made no sense to me why they didn't at least trade back five or six spots, then grab him. That that whole debacle there made no sense. They're at least trying on the interior offensive line. I understand they got those two guys from Indianapolis, both of their names slipping my mind right now, but Minnesota could have handled this a lot better. I don't understand the Ty Felton pick. There were better guys on the board there. He's not better than Jalen Naylor, and then the rest of the guys, there's better tight ends on the board in the sixth round. The Tyrone Ingram Dawkins pick is just kind of a filler pick, and Kobe King's just kind of a filler there. But we're gonna finally get into some winners here. One of my favorite drafts to talk about is the Las Vegas Raiders draft, and specifically these first five picks. And now I love the Genti pick, number four player in my class, or number three player in my class overall. Jack Bech, I loved. I think he'll fit perfectly alongside Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. Granted, he'll probably be the third target, depending on how much work Genti gets out of the backfield. But he's going to be a perfect fit there. If you need him to run a sacrificial X route, he can do that. And he's got great hands. He's not, again, terrific on the vertical routes, but he can kind of play inside a little bit if you need him to. Darian Porter, absolutely love talking about this kid. Blazer, 6'3", can stick with any receiver in the league. Great man techniques. And then Caleb Rogers was a tiny bit of a reach, but I understand it in terms of drafting for volume there. Drafting in case Colton Miller goes down, which is fine. Like hedging your bets with a draft pick is perfectly fine for me as long as it's not a first round pick. And Charles Grant is an absolute mauler in the run game. He's gonna be awesome there. I think he could probably maybe even start, like maybe. And then the rest of the draft is a lot of like just kind of filling in volume. The two quarterbacks they took in the sixth round, I like because it just kind of adds the quarterback room, gets just more guys in the building, kind of keeping Geno Smith fire under his ass. Great move there for the Raiders there. So they're one of my winners. Indianapolis Colts, one of my losers. After Tyler Warren, this whole thing went downhill. JT Tuimoloau out again. There were other guys on the board that I preferred, including Jack Sawyer, who didn't even go till I believe 110 of the Steelers. I think somewhere along the line of the Steelers. But Tuimoloau was a massive reach. Wally was a reach. And then Giddens made no sense to me with Taylor there. I would have preferred, honestly, another team getting him. I feel bad for DJ Giddens there. And then Wohler was probably the pick for pick, pound for pound, best pick after Tyler Warren. It's just not a and they had interior offensive line needs and absolutely did not address any of those needs whatsoever. They're one of my losers. Another one of my winners, Atlanta Falcons. Now, the problem I had with them was not really jockeying around the draft board as well as they should have. I think they could have waited a little bit on Jalen Walker. I think they could have waited maybe a pick or two for James Pierce, but they needed two edge rushers, or they just needed edge rushers. And the goal of this, when you have a desperate need at a position, is to take multiple lottery tickets and kind of figure out, okay, who's going to be that guy for us? Is it going to be Jalen Walker? Is it going to be James Pierce? All right. And then Xavier Watts, I really liked in the third round. I think he should have gone higher, probably top 80 at least. And Billy Bowman Jr., they probably could have moved a couple spots back and still gotten him. But I still think it was an excellent pick there. And I think Atlanta's going to be a heavy contender in the NFC South. I really do. I think they could be a top three seed next year, potentially. Washington Commanders, one of my losers. This is a consensus kind of loser pick here. Josh Connerly, I wasn't big on him going into the draft process to begin with. It kind of grew on me a little bit, crept up my board. Um, but Amos was an okay pick, and then the rest of it was just like you're throwing at a dartboard with Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Like good value, but like, is it really like a difference maker? K Madrano, Jalen Lane. Again, I really didn't like the Jalen Lane pick at all. But yeah, Washington, swing and a miss for me. Could have done a lot better in this draft. Winner, New York Giants. Another team I absolutely love talking about draft wise. Now, there's a couple small reasons why they don't get my top spot in the winner department. And it's because they could have probably waited on Jackson Dart a little bit. And honestly, there's not much else other than they did a lot of this out of desperation. And that's perfectly okay. And I would have also liked them to see if they could grab a couple more offensive linemen, especially drafting a new quarterback and having two other new veteran quarterbacks in the building. Abdul Carter, awesome pick there. He was my number two player overall behind Hunter. Jackson Dart, solid pick. If he can develop, Giants got a Josh Allen on their hands. But the problem I see with Dart is he doesn't have that untapped potential I saw with Josh Allen. Darius Alexander should have gone a round and a half earlier. This was an awesome, awesome pick. Should have been early second round. Went early third. You could even argue late first for Darius Alexander. I would have taken him over Tyreek Williams. This was a great pick by the Giants. I understand he may not play very often, but Brian Daboll and Joe Shane are making an effort to kind of build that mold of the Eagles defensive line where they're just kind of taking a big frickin' guys who can get after the quarterback. And they've got a hell of a defensive line now. One of the best defensive lines of football. Cam Skattebo, he's going to be the perfect thunder to Tyrone Tracy's lightning. Marcus and Bo along the offensive line. I think that was an absolute steal. Probably should have gone two rounds earlier. And then Fedoni out of Nebraska is a perfectly fine pick. And then, yeah, it was just an overall great draft for New York. This probably saved Joe Shane and Brian Daboll's job. Loser, Detroit Lions. My favorite pick of theirs was Ratledge. And Tyreek Williams, again, they could have waited a long time to take Tyreek Williams. They could have waited till the end of the second round and taken Tyreek Williams, and it would have benefited them. Tesla, I don't understand him as a potential Jameson Williams replacement. Like, really, like a 6'4" guy who maybe has the traits to win out the boundary in the NFL, um, and maybe has the speed. Like, Miles Frazier was an okay pick, and then the rest of the draft, it was kind of just filler needs. I would have much preferred them grab a like Darian Porter would have been awesome for them in the second round. I would have absolutely loved that pick if they maybe traded back from 57 and went and got Darian Porter. That would have been a great pick and would have kept them off of this list if they got Darian Porter. Otherwise, not a great draft for a team that just went out in the wild card round or in the divisional round at home. I'm hoping for the best for this team, but it doesn't look great. Winner, my New England Patriots. Just the overall volume of their class. I I like the Campbell pick, I like the Henderson pick, but my favorite part of this draft was the fifth round where they took Joshua Farmer and Braden Swinson. Both were either in my top 10 defensive line rankings, like in terms of edge and interior, or just like on the cusp of it. Those were my two favorite picks of the draft. Those guys are going to be absolute monsters. I really, really like the athleticism that Elliott Wolf went after in this draft. Craig Woodson, a decent fit there. Could he see playing time year one? Maybe, but he's kind of more of a kind of down the line starter, just kind of project safety, develop him a little bit more. Jarrett Wilson, he's going to slide right in that offensive line. He's probably going to start day one or week one. Kyle Williams was my least favorite pick of this draft. I just didn't understand it as a guy who can't win consistently on a vertical route. For a team that needs a guy who can win on a vertical route, I really don't understand. He's not going to win as an X in this league, I don't think. I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong there. Travion Henderson, love the pick. Will Campbell is an absolute monster. Let's move into the next loser on the list, the Chicago Bears. Now, draft slot wise, Burden was a solid pick, and maybe Loveland wouldn't have lasted as long, but I didn't understand a lot of these picks here. Didn't understand the Loveland pick at 10. You've got, you're adding another tight end that can't block as well. Like, it's not a blocking upgrade. It's not a ridiculous receiving upgrade. As much as I am a Michigan fan, like Colston Loveland has the receiving aspect of his game, but does he have the receiving aspect to warrant a top 10 pick with another tight end in the same room? I don't know. Ozzie Trapillo was my favorite pick of this Bears class. They should have drafted a lot more volume, and they didn't along that offensive line. They didn't really draft a lot of volume on the defensive line. Two of their weakest points last year were that offensive and defensive line, and they just kind of ignored it a little bit. Turner was an okay pick. They completely reached on the Maryland linebacker, Hippolyte. Za Frazier's grown on me a little bit, but not enough to necessarily be like, wow, they're not a loser in this class anymore. And Monangai, again, okay pick. They probably could have gotten him as a UDFA. This moves in to my winner of the draft, Cleveland Browns. It's a crazy statement, winner of the draft and Cleveland Browns in the same sentence. Mason Graham getting a top four player in this class certainly helps. Adding two running backs to a depleted and injury prone running back room absolutely helps. Fannin, I really like the fit there. Joku's probably on his way out, and then Sanders was a great value. I really only pick I didn't like of theirs was Dylan Gabriel, and they didn't really have to do a lot of jockeying around the board to get me to like this class more. But my favorite pick was the Carson Schlesinger pick. Understandably, probably a little high in the eyes of some scouts and some analysts, but this guy is instinctive. This guy has a mind for football. I really, really like this fit in Cleveland. Very under the radar player. He was the first pick of the second round. I think Cleveland got a steal here. Uh, we're talking about a potential defense that has Mason Graham on it, Denzel Ward, Carson Schlesinger, and then not to mention some guy named Myles Garrett. So this and with this draft, Cleveland's not going to win the division, but this was certainly a step in the right direction towards getting back to the playoffs. This probably saves Kevin Stefanski's job. Now, you do have to figure out the quarterback situation. I understand that. I think Shedeur Sanders definitely has a viable route towards winning the job week one, but he's got to go earn it. And again, I don't think Cleveland's winning the division year one, but this draft was absolutely a step in the right direction. And this wraps everything up. If you liked the video, please subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment telling me your winner, your loser, or why you think your team should have been on here. Please let me know, and that'll do it.